Well, thank you, Dottie. Thank you for the privilege of introducing Ilarion and for hosting and all the incredibly good work that you do. Tonight's speaker, as everybody knows, is Ilarion Merculieff. He is Unangan and Aleut. He was born and raised on St. Paul Island, the largest of four in the Pribilof Islands in the Bering Sea off the north coast of Alaska. And I think many of you know Ilarion or have seen him on videotape. And we've used several of those in sessions with this IONS group. I think Ilarion will look very familiar to a lot of you because we've used those as a focus for dialogue groups and also to make a point in our presentations. And I hope you've read tonight's invitation and learned more about his background and accolades. I'm not going to get into the myriad of really good work that he's done. But the topic tonight is the real human being, and that's in the introduction what I really want to talk about. And I have no idea what Ilarion's going to talk about, as he generally speaks spontaneously and from the heart. And however, I have heard him speak on this topic before and have come away believing that we all live in the possibility of being our real selves. And how successful we are depends in part on how much we listen and learn from the natural world and its life-giving, nurturing processes. To a large degree, this is defined culturally. How are we raised? How clearly do we see the realities of life? How do we flow with nature's processes? What languages do we speak? And tonight, how we listen and learn from someone who has listened and learned from nature and her proteges. My hope is that we will each, in our own way, have an awakening of an already knowing, that we each become more in touch with our own indigeneity. So welcome, Ilarion, welcome, Yael, and it's all yours.
Juan, ang kinga kay kamnang ang kinga kasuda tingo nangan way nangan asota Kuuyux ting kawalangan nangan way. I said hello, my other self, which is Ang Juan. It's the way that our people greet each other every day, and that I said the evening tastes good, I said my traditional name is Kuuyux, which means like an arm extending out from the body, a carrier of ancient knowledge into modern times, a messenger. That name was given to me when I was 4 years old by the last Kuuyux that was left alive amongst all of my people. And now I'm living the legacy of that name. And I said that I'm Kawalanganunangan, which is, we have been out in the Bering Sea for over 10,000 years and we're still there. My people were quite a remarkable people, as everyone who comes from a people will say, but it's really very true for me, where we have stories about coming out of Egypt, going to Outer Mongolia, to Siberia, to Kamchatka, and across by traditional craft. And we developed a very spiritually based culture, which was matrilineal. The women were the ones that initiated our shamans. And we have a moon calendar that we use even today. We developed the most densely populated linear mile of shoreline in all of North America for our time. And during this, and the reason for that is that, like the Tibetans, we didn't even wear shoes even in the wintertime, no footwear. We're the only Alaska Native group that didn't have any footwear even in the wintertime. It's like the Tibetans, we sit on the snow and we melt it. We understand that being present in the moment and in the heart is all that's needed. We don't need to plan or things like that. You know, I talked to my elder when I was young about, you know, what is this culture all about? And he says, do you see that seabird over there? Do you think it worries about where it's going to get the food the next day? And are we any different? And of course, the answer is no. And I was born and raised on a very idyllic island for a child, St. Paul Island in the middle of the Bering Sea. We had at that time when I was a child about 1.2 million northern fur seals, 2.5 million seabirds, 1,000 reindeer, and 500 Unangan people. We call ourselves Unangan because we don't use the word Aleut, even though that's what we're called in American. It's the name given to us by our former oppressors, the Russians. And we had such a, you know, my generation was the last generation that had a fully intact traditional upbringing, where the entire village raised me. And to get to know the women, I had to be with the women preparing food and listening to their talks when they were together. I had to spend equal time with the men to learn hunting and fishing and the Unangan traditional ways. And I was with elders every week from age 5 to age 13 when they went camping. So they would just tell me story after story after story. And of course, I was with my peers. I had to spend equal time with them, and my job was to play. That's all. It was quite a beautiful way. And, you know, I would walk down the street in the village, and I'd be, any adult that encountered me, I would always be affirmed. Always affirmed from age 5 to age 13. Good boy. Something like that, they would say. And I could go to anybody's house, day or night, and be treated like the long lost son. Come in, sit down, eat. That's the way I was greeted every time from age 5 to age 13. And I was never scolded. How many of you have never been scolded? Just out of curiosity, raise your hand. Okay, yeah, well, it was an ingenious thing in terms of raising a child, because, you know, my mom would tell me, you know, when we're born, we cry. And when we die, or we're done visiting this world, as we would say, then we would celebrate. And the reason for that is that we're free form before we become human in this dense form. Is very heavy, and we're going to have dense and heavy things happen. And so we cry for that baby, and we celebrate when they're done visiting this world, because we're back to free form again. And that was the way that our people understood the world. You know, when I was never scolded, one time, just to give you an example, I wanted to buy this plastic airplane down in the store, and so I stole $20 from my grandpa. And $20 during that time was a lot of money, because it would take a whole year to make $20. And but I stole it, and I bought this plane, and unbeknownst to me, my aunt was standing right behind me. And I turned around and said, oh, I'm caught. You know, I was about 9 years old, and she didn't say a word to me until I walked out of the building, out of earshot of anybody. And she said in a very unaccusatory way, Mary, where'd you get that money to buy the airplane? And of course, I knew I was caught, so I told her I stole it from my grandpa. And she goes, what do you think you should do about that? she left it up to me to decide what I should do. And so I said, well, I guess I should take the plane back, get the $20 and tell my papa I stole it. And she goes, Mahun, okay, just like that. And then I walked in, turned the plane back in, got $20, and she took $20 out of her own pocket to buy the plane for me. It was quite amazing. Then I tell my papa, you know, I stole this money from you, Papa. And he goes, good boy. You know, I stole $20 from him. He tells me, good boy. Well, the genius of that is that we reward the correct behavior and ignore the incorrect behavior. And I never stole again for the rest of my life. So that was a lesson well learned. And to get to know my grandfather, and for my grandfather to get to know me, I had to be with him 24/7 for 2 years, starting at age 4. And, you know, I would go to work with him when he worked for the federal government as a slave. By the way, you're talking to someone who was a former slave. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that later. But anyway, I would go to work with him. I'd go to his friends when they visit to drink coffee or tea, and I would go down to the Bering Sea, take our shirts off, and we'd pray towards the east. And that night we might go to the Russian Orthodox Church, because he didn't see any difference in where one received one's spirituality. And he taught me something that still stays with me today. After we did our prayer in the ocean, we went for a walk on a beautiful day. Out in the Pribilos, we get 20 days of sunshine a year. And this day was sunshine and no wind. And we're called birthplace of the winds. There's winds there all the time, but no wind. Sea was calm. The birds were singing. The seals were barking. And I just had to say something. I said, it's sure beautiful. In Unungan Tunu, I said, in the Aleut language. It's sure beautiful. And he goes, shh, tutuda. And what he said probably encapsulates why our people survived and thrived in Bering Sea for over 10,000 years. What he said was listen. That's all he said, just one word, listen. And I learned later on through experience what he meant by that. And that is to listen with your entire being. Not listen with your ears, but with your entire being. This is the way that our people listened, and that words are superfluous and may be dangerous, which in fact they are, as we learn today with all the dualities that exist in the world. But anyway, then I had a traditional mentor called an acha. An acha relationship is a relationship that's not established by self-appointment, by appointment from other people. It's when a young person and older person see each other, they know that that's my acha. And we would call each other acha. And he taught me much of what I know about being a man, about reverence for life, about cooperation, patience, and all these kinds of things, including the hunting technologies. But yet from age 5 to age 13, when he had me under his wing, he may have said no more than 200 words to me. Because words, as I said, are considered superfluous and may even be dangerous. And that the adult's job is to create the space for a child to learn, not tell them what to learn, how to learn, or to define anything. I grew up not asking a single question. I had to watch, listen, and learn. And the adult job is simply to create the space for me to learn. The genius of that is that I can expand out to the maximum of my capability without the interference of another adult, without the prescription, without the biases of another adult. I was free to learn as I did. And that's how I grew up. It's a very important thing, because I think that it was in Europe, I think it was the UK, University of London, that studied children and learned that children are geniuses. Every single child is raised at a genius level until the adults interfere and start taking it away and dumb us down over time. And this is something that most people have a hard time understanding, but it is so true that the child has an intelligence that we do not afford them through the systems that we've created today through this, what I call the masculine imbalance, but I'll describe that later. We are simply present in the moment and in the heart. The rest is taken care of because we have been given everything that we need. It's only through the few in the world that invented, invented scarcity. Like we invented body odor to sell deodorant. You know, we just simply do not understand that we have been given everything that we need, and that it is not God's job to correct the things that are illusion that were created by human beings. The fact that we have scarcity is because we humans created it. But anyway, that's another story. One of the things that I do is work for the wisdom weavers of the world. I believe one person said that you've seen the film. I think many of you may have seen the film, a 14-minute film of messages from the elders to the world.
In the chat box.
Okay, yeah, I was putting that in the chat box. And this 14-minute film was launched by Reuters last year during Earth Day. It was seen by 80,000 people the first day. These are messages from the elders to the world from a meeting that we held in Kauai in 2017 with asking them two questions. What is the state of the world as you see it now? And what must we be doing now? And what they say is that business as usual, it will not work anymore. Business as usual will not work anymore. So that everything that we are doing and have been doing for years is not going to work anymore. That it is not a logical or rational process that comes from the mind. It's from the heart, which is trans-rational. That our hearts will tell us what we need to do during these times to face these daunting challenges that we're facing around the world today. You know, the political corruption, the refugees, the wars, the violation of women, all of these things are things that we have inherited that cannot be solved through the mind. This is according to the elders that I work with, which were elders from all over the world. And that what we need to do is what my people have done for generations, which is be present in the moment and in the heart, not in the mind. And that your heart will tell you what you need to do. That's why my people were the only people in Alaska that didn't have food storage technologies, except for air drying, which is wind, the birthplace of the wind, but no other food storage technologies. And yet we developed the most densely populated linear mile of shoreline in North America. And it was simply a type of faith. For those of you who follow the Christian path, it's a faith that was described in the Bible, but few people understood. That we trust in our bodies, trust in our lives, trust in life processes, trust in Mother Earth, trust in the universe, trust in a role we call the maker. All of this embodied at the cellular level of the body. And when you have that, you don't think. It's not a thought process. It's simply something that you embody. And then when you embody this kind of trust, which is what the Bible refers to as faith, that's going to be far more than enough. Even Jesus said, this too and more you shall do. And faith could move mountains, all these kinds of things that are hidden wisdom in the text of the Bible. I'm not a Christian. I used to be a Christian, but now I follow my own people's path, the path of spirituality. And this, ions is interested, for example, in quantum physics. And this quantum physics is now coming to the point of understanding what Native peoples all over the world have been doing all this time. And that we have quantum entanglements, and that we have these different ways that scientifically each particle is affecting every other particle. That's why we say Angwan, which is hello, my other self. We are energy beings, and we carry a vibration. And that when we pour our energies into stopping something, be it war, be it, all these things that we are haunted by today, if we're focusing on stopping it, the energy, we are mental, physical, and spiritual energies pouring into this, what we're trying to stop in reaction to what's happening. And that what happens is that this energy goes into that thing and makes it bigger. And, it's, you wonder why we have thousands of more environmental organizations in existence today than there were 30 years ago, all over the world, but yet Mother Earth's life support systems are coming to the edge, and no one asks why. It's something that is quite easy to answer if we just drop all the ways that we're thinking about things. And we've been praying for the end of wars for thousands of years. Why hasn't war stopped? And the reason why is we're pouring this energy into stopping in reaction to what's happening. The elders say that instead we must focus on that which we want to see happen in the world, not in reaction to anything else. Yes, we should engage over here to stop something, but do not pour our mental, physical, and spiritual energies into that. Do it, but minimize the amount of energy that we place in that, and instead focus on that which we want to see. And what this is what makes sense to the elders, that business as usual is not going to work anymore. And that we are the ones we've been waiting for. That is, we are here, each human being is here in this world today for a purpose. And that purpose is to work towards the survival of human beings. The elders say that, Mother Earth has survived for billions of years. She's going to survive for billions more. It's a question about whether or not we humans are going to survive. And here in Alaska, I was reading the latest climatological reports, and scientists who are studying climate change, and they said, some of them said, we may already have gone past the tipping points. And that we can see that the effects of that here in Alaska. And now the lower 48 is seeing it. You in Washington State and Oregon have seen the rampant wildfires, and down in California, and wildfires everywhere, Siberia, Australia. I mean, all of these are just one symptom. And then you've got, deforestation and all these environmental degradation things. And we tend to, I think, focus on one thing at a time. That the real answers, according to the elders, is you must go to the heart. And for the women, they must combine the heart with the womb. Because according to our stories, and I know this to be true because I don't talk about anything that I don't know myself, because the women have the identical field of energy as what we call the womb at the center of the universe. It's a place of creation and creativity. And that identical energy is in every woman's womb. And that when women get together in sisterhood and heal themselves, then they can collectively project this container, this energy into a container outside of themselves so that something new can be birthed. Until this happens, nothing new is going to be birthed at all. You talk about hybrid fuels. That's a good idea, right? Well, when the US converted to hybrid fuels, then lots of the world scientists or world farmers changed from food crops to fuel crops, increasing the price of food worldwide and increasing starvation. That's a brilliant idea. We can go on and on about these ideas, but they are nothing but the old, in my opinion, regurgitated as the new. We just don't recognize it. And that what we must do is take stock of where we're at. How did we get there? We're studying everything under the sun outside of ourselves. We need to study climate change. We're going to study climate change, and the scientists will always say, we need to study. No scientist worth their salt will say anything definitively that this is the cause. That's a rule, and it's there for a purpose. But what we have to recognize is that these things are a reality, that what we did in the past 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, we had this massive shift of the pendulum from feminine imbalance to masculine imbalance, and masculine to feminine, and feminine to masculine. It was like a pendulum swinging back and forth since the beginning of time. And that the elders are saying that this is our opportunity now to bring this pendulum into dead center, so that we will be real human beings again. And I can tell you a lot of what I experienced as a real human being. But I'll just tell you two stories really quickly, and I'll end it at that, and we'll open to questions and answers. When my acha took me out hunting, we'd usually go with 4 or 5 hunters, and we're hunting stellar sea lions from the shore to the water, because it's too rough during the times of the year that we hunt the stellar sea lion, and for a boat to operate. So we use high-powered rifles. And the men, we would go out like 4 o'clock in the morning, be at the place at 6 o'clock in the morning when the sun rises, and wait there the entire day sometimes for one sea lion to come by. And here I am, starting at 6 years old. My acha takes me out hunting, and by the time noon arrives, I'm daydreaming, or I'm sleeping, or something would happen. But the men would never, ever get daydreaming or sleepy. And I thought that was magical. And then someone would say all of a sudden, "Kawakako, sea lion coming." Now, mind you, we're on an island, and there's 180 degrees of water. The sea lion could be anywhere, but instantly all the men would look at one spot in the ocean. And they would look, and I'd look, because they're sure that sea lion is there, and I don't see a sea lion. And then sure enough, 5 or 10 minutes later, the sea lion pops up exactly where they're looking. And I thought that was magical. I learned at 6 years old how the men did it. They learned from the seabirds. I used to love the seabirds. We were the fifth, one of the top 5 bird colonies in North America at one point in time on the Merculieff Island. And we have millions of seabirds. And there'd be thick-billed murres, common murres, and crested auklets, and least auklets, and pelagic cormorants, and tufted puffins, horned puffins. We had all kinds of species. And I loved the way that these birds were, because they were so full of life. And at 6 years old, I would walk 3 miles out of the village by myself in the dark to be there when the birds first wake up at sunrise. And sure enough, the birds would come, and they would be oblivious to me. They'd be flying within inches of me on the bird cliffs, all of them on this bird cliff. Now, one bird cliff may have had at that time at least 10,000 seabirds. 10,000. And they were just so full of life, and the sound was just incredible. And so I decided, I want to be a seabird. I'm 6 years old. I said, I want to be a seabird. What's the difference between a seabird and a human? And I said, I thought, seabirds don't think. They just are. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try to do that. I'm not going to think and just be. And sure enough, within 2 months, I was able to accomplish it. I could go for hours without a single thought passing through my head. And that's what the hunters learned, because when I started to practice that out hunting, I could feel the sea lion before it arrived. And we fished for halibut, hook, line, and sinker. And I could feel the halibut when it's coming towards the lion. And I can tell you how it's hooked by the lip or the jaw or the side of the body. I can tell you what size it is. I can tell you how it's going to fight on the way up. All of this information before I even see the halibut. And this is just a natural way of being that we call the real human being. Now, in Alaska, all the tribes are called the human being or the real human being, be it Dene, be it Inupiat, Yupik, Onungan, they all mean the human being is a real human being. It's a message from the past to the present that all we need to do is be present in the moment and in the heart, and the rest will be taken care of. And so I think that's enough for now, and we'll just field any questions or comments.
I'll just share, Ilarion, when I read your book, The Wisdom Keepers, I remember reading it on the airplane flying from someplace, and I knew I was going to interview you on a radio show, and I couldn't stop crying, you know, about your experience as a child and the natural, how nature taught you about how to be, as opposed to who you need, what you need to do. And when you describe your affiliation with the birds, it's so magical. So, and I have your book, and since then, you know, Wisdom Keepers and in the book, Stop Talking. You know, there's another beautiful book about what higher education could do to become more present. So here we are, you know, and you and I were together when Milt, you know, helped coordinate that talking circle here in Portland for climate change. And we brought, because of you, we brought the indigenous leaders from North America to a talking circle. And that was that 3 years ago? I think, I don't know. It's like 3 years ago, I think. Maybe it was 4 years ago. Was it?
2017.
Yeah, so it's like 4 years ago. So, and back then it was like real immediacy, like people need to wake up to, you know, and the whole Pull Together Now, you can go to pulltogethernow.org and see the video that we created based on Ilarion's talking circle. But I'm just curious, here it is, 2021, Ilarion, this idea of how to come from a place of being as opposed to doing, getting out of our heads, of our thinking. How do we, you know, this connection that nature is here to teach us who we are meant to be, the highest possibility, but people don't, you know, because we have to let go of our programming. You know, that's what I've been working on for lots of Milt and several other people, I'm sure, on this. So letting go of the programming to get present to what's most important right now in this moment, and to believe that we can be the change we want to see. It's not about do the change, it's about be the change. What would be your recommendation of how to really ground that and trust that we have the faith to be the change that we want to see in the world?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that question, Renee. You know, I spent a week with Don Alejandro, who at that time, he was the keeper of the day calendar for the Mayans. And we spent a week together up in Canada. And he said that the ones who are going to negotiate this time the best are going to be people of the fire, which means people of the heart. And that what he says is that we're going to have really hard times amongst the human beings during this time. And what the elders say about that is that as the whirlwind intensifies, do not get caught up in it, because once you get caught up in it, it'll be hard to get out. Stay in your center, your proverbial center, which is your heart, and the center of the river of life, because it knows where it's going and we don't. And that what we do, you're right, you cannot become that which you do not have. And so if you want to have love in the world, you have to become love. If you want peace in the world, you have to become peace. Not think peace, not do peace, just be peace. And the elders are saying that the most unselfish thing you can do during this time is to heal yourself. And the rest will be taken care of. Now, this is a challenge to most people in the world, because we have to plan, right? We have to plan how we're going to survive for food and how we're going to survive for money in this system. All these kinds of planning that is the antithesis of where we must go. The HopiMaori say, let go the sides of the riverbank, move toward the center, find those who have done the same, and celebrate. What that means is letting go of all human attachments. And that's a big order, as you know. And go to the center, it means go to the center of your proverbial center, which is your heart, and the center of the river of life, because it knows where it's going, we don't. And find those who've done the same is find those who've had the courage to jump like you did. And that's going to be the new definition, according to these elders, of tribe. A new definition of tribe is emerging. I talk with people all over the world. I'm doing like 2 gatherings a week for the last year and a half, all over the world. And I can see that people are changing. You're not alone in trying to struggle through what you're doing. There are millions of people who are now changing. And they said, well, okay, we recognize that nothing seems to work anymore. Now what do we do? And they open themselves up. And that's where the wisdom weaver steps in with their messages. That what we must do is quite a challenge, but for women, it's going to be much shorter. I'll explain why later, but what we're trying to do is get rid of these onion layers of trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, intergenerational trauma. I mean, women, especially, you are downloading the energy of these traumas into you. Your mother downloads it into you when you're a fetus. And then you're born a woman. So you're going to suffer the things that women suffer in a male-dominated society. And then you have the collective consciousness of women, millions and millions of women all over the world. And they have this collective consciousness of injury. And that women, when they get together in sisterhood, can heal this fast, quick. We men, we might take a whole lifetime to learn something or to heal something. But for women, they could do it quick if they get together in sisterhood. So you have a great advantage over us. This is also why, by the way, that the Dalai Lama and many of the indigenous people all over the world say during this time, women will take the lead because women understand relationship. And, I often describe the masculine and feminine. The masculine is on the surface and the feminine is down deep. And the feminine and masculine need to go the opposite direction of what they're doing and meet in the center. And for men to go down deep is a tall order, as many women know. But women, we also need to lighten up. And so that's what the men can provide you with is lightening up. But when you do that, we're going to have a gift that is shared with the world that has been created by the masculine and feminine coming into balance. Each direction has a gift to give. The sacred white, sacred yellow color has a gift of air, which is the mastery and movement of breath in harmony with the universe. The sacred black color is motion and movement and energy in harmony with the universe. Now, motion, movement, and harmony, for the sacred black color, that is something that has been twisted by the masculine imbalance. So you got rhythm, right? Yeah, rah, rah. Well, that rhythm is very important. Then the sacred red-brown color is the gift of the knowledge and mastery of communing with Mother Earth. And the sacred white color is a gift of fire. Now, one of the ways that the fire has manifested itself in the masculine imbalance is rocket engines, the combustion engine, all of these things that explode. But when they come into harmony, they're going to come together and create a gift for the world that has not been seen since the beginning of time. And one thing I should note is that time is a human invention, according to us. That when we first left our hearts and we left the proverbial moment that all the sages have been talking about for millennia, that we left the proverbial moment. That proverbial moment is infinite. And we left it through guilt, shame, remorse, anger, rage, jealousy, all these things from the past that live with us today, or fear, which is projection to the future of something that hasn't happened yet. Every place except the proverbial now. And I think it was Deepak Chopra that said, God can only be found in the silence between one's thoughts. And silence is something that we don't have in this society. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah, I get it. The opportunity of, yeah, there's a lot there. I've taken like 5 pages of notes. I'll get back to you on what it all means, but I'm following you. Thank you so much for being a great example. And I would just say there's, from the conversations you're having with people around the world, is there a way, is there a pathway for the women leaders to connect related to the messages that you're sharing? And if so, please give us direction on where we can go.
yeah, absolutely. There are women's groups that have formed and have been formed for years now. Women are far ahead of us men in terms of getting it together, thankfully, because they're going to take the lead. But there are women's groups all over the world. And my wife and partner, Yael, she conducts women's circles, and maybe you could talk very quickly about what's coming up.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of women's circles that I'm a part of, but nothing, I wouldn't say that's resonating with what you're saying today. Thank you.
Yeah. So many times when we did gatherings in Israel, our story really quickly is that I saw a video of his. I was a TED volunteer translator, translated it to Hebrew. It became viral, and he had to come to Israel. I managed to pull him. Took 2 years, but he ended up in Israel and did some gatherings. And one of the main things when he said what he just told you is we did women's gathering, and the sisterhood was very, very wounded. So in a lot of women's circles, this is the first thing that comes up, and it's calling for us to heal that. And so I totally hear you, Renee. And when another thing that happened was many times people say to him, okay, we hear you and we feel our heart open, but how do we maintain that? How do I go into my heart without you in front of me? And so our elders, this has been an ongoing question, and our elders didn't want to give a formula or a recipe. They're like, go into your heart. That's where you'll find the answers. But still, people need some guidance. And so the elders, with the support team, we created a whole series of online events because time is urging us to do something. And so we urged our elders, and they agreed to have online events, which we're going to start on Tuesday. But then the elders told us the first thing that needs to happen for anything truly new and healthy to be birthed into the world is to have an all feminine sacred space. So we have some amazing women elders leading it's a womb ceremony. It's a heart womb ceremony on Monday. This is what I put for you in the chat box. You can find it in the events at the Wisdom Weavers site. And that's going to be very powerful, I'm sure, because the elders that said yes just blew us away. So this is the first thing that's happening. And that would then give the energy for the other gatherings, for the good communication, for the elders' messages to come forth.
It would set the stage.
Set the stage.
Yeah, but second day.
Second day is, you want to talk about it? No?
No.
I'll talk about it. Okay, so that's happening on Monday, and then on Tuesday, our elders Kuuyux and Kumu Sabra from Hawaii and Suzanne Swiebold from Canada, they're going to start talking about going into the heart and about love, because one of the main message is become love, be the change you want to see in the world. You want the world to be peaceful, be peace. You want the world to be filled with love, be love. You know, love is also wounded in our world. So we asked our elders, but you know, even just talk about it so that people can then resonate within and go there and have something to go back to. So this is what they're going to be doing. And from there, we'll see how it takes off.
So glad I asked, Ilarion.
Glad you did too, Renee.
Honestly, I'm just guided to ask and so appreciate. What a wonderful partner you've brought to your life. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you.
Yep, I think I'm happy for me too.
So if I might ask a question, I think it's tied to this, but somewhat different. It seems to me that in being deeply connected to the earth, there's a connection to spirituality, and there's a connection to ceremony, both of which are not very well understood in the Western world. And in fact, I think it's still very prevalent that you can go to certain business groups or school groups or something like this, and you can't even mention the word spirituality. It's just been like taken out of the vernacular. And it seems to me that earth ethic is what underlies everything. I may be wrong, but it just seems to me that infusing that earth ethic with its spirituality, and probably through ceremony that we don't understand, is one of the paths that we have to take. And I just wondered if you would comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Milt. Earth ethics is really the key stepping stone to moving with your heart, because what it is a vibration. The ceremonies are nothing but vibration, and that's manifested in a particular form. And that energy allows Native people to communicate with Mother Earth. Like you're actually, people ask, what's happening with the pandemic? Well, the answer from Mother Earth is that this is an effort to try to, I'm going to paraphrase because Mother Earth doesn't talk in words. She is trying to wake us up. Her vibration is going up. And if you check the science about this, you will see that it's going up by quantum leaps. And that what happens is that we humans are not separate from Mother Earth. We are identical to each other. And that because we are her children. And what is happening is that this energy is hitting us humans and pushing out the things that we have kept hidden all this time, either consciously or unconsciously. This is why everything in the world seems to be coming apart, because things that were hidden are now showing up. And they're showing up for us to have the opportunity to heal that which we could not see before. And so the pandemic, she released this pandemic. And if you remember the first days of the pandemic, the world stopped. Cars stopped. And people stopped going to places, everything like that. And what happened is that animals started showing up where people used to be all over the world. And you could see the Himalayas from India for the first time in 30 years. And the ozone layer above the Arctic healed. And this is Mother Earth showing us how quickly she can heal. She doesn't need us to heal her. She just needs us to go to our correct niche, which is to help her. And so that's the reason that she's unleashed this pandemic. Now it's going to get worse if we don't pay attention, if we don't take stock of what we're doing, and don't make the connection between what's happening on the outside to what's happening to us on the inside, to the survival of the human race. We have to understand this. And so, you know, when we think about these things and Earth consciousness, that in order for us to learn how to live on Mother Earth, we have to be able to communicate with her. As crazy as that may sound to people, that is the way that indigenous people do it. And also that through our spirituality, we, in connection with our heart and our womb, we can talk directly with God. This may be something that most people don't understand. We don't pray to God like Santa Claus God. You know, please, God, give me this, give me that, help my friend. She's dying of cancer, she's dying of COVID. No, what we do as Native people is simply to give thanks and gratitude, because we have been given everything that we need. And what we need to do is, instead of praying that way, is to take charge of ourselves, to know that I am responsible for everything that's happening in the world. You and me, this is another meeting about I on one. You are my other self. And that we are equally culpable for what's happening in the world today, whether or not we know it. I don't know if Milt, that answered your question or not.
Thank you. Yes. I don't know whether did he. It's a very strange thing about a conversation like this. That I think you do. I just think you get a little closer to the answer, as opposed to
Yeah. Now,
not knowing.
you know what, Milt, and all of you who have these kind of questions, ask your heart.
Yeah.
Because your heart knows already. And anything that I may say that may resonate with you, I'm just reminding you of what you already know.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, when I introduced you, I closed with that thought that what comes is an awakening of an already knowing, a connection with the indigeneity that each of us hold and has been obscured. So it just peels away more and more.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Dottie, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, very interesting conversation. I'm enjoying this very much. Thank you. My question is, Can you speak a little bit to the role of time? Because it strikes me as I listen to your words that what you're talking about in terms of how for us to go kind of internally and be is that may or may not affect change. We don't know whether it affects change now or sometime down the road. We ourselves in our current human form may or may not see the change that you're talking about. And so often I think as humans, I'll speak for myself, I get caught up in time. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. That's something that has driven human beings since the beginning of time. And we started the time, remember, I say, when we left our hearts, when we left the infinite moment, that's when time started for human beings. And it's the most daunting thing to human beings because we see that as normal time. Of course, we're getting older, you know, everything gets broken down with age and all that kind of stuff. Well, we're worried about that. And if you just release it, release the worry of all kinds, including that worry about time, then you're coming close to what it means to be in the present moment. That in the present moment, when you think about this moment, everything is okay for you. You're safe, you're sound. You're listening to this conversation moment to moment. But when you begin to worry or focus on something that is negative, you're already outside of this proverbial moment, and you're creating time, and we're all doing that. And so the question is, you know, how do I live in a way that doesn't have time as a factor? And only you can answer that, because every person is very different. Every single person in the world is very different. You have different gifts, you have different struggles. And so you have to answer it for yourself. It's your sacred path. Now, in the traditional way, I cannot interfere with your sacred path. I can offer you that which I have, but whether or not you pick up anything is none of my business. It's only you. And so I don't concern myself about whether or not people pick up what I say. I'm just going to say what I have and leave it at that.
And building on that is the question about lack. You mentioned there is no lack, that too is human made. Can you say more about that, please?
Yeah. Well, you know, this thing about human lack only comes when we destroy parts of Mother Earth so that we can't grow food there anymore, or we hoard things and we want to buy things. These are all ways that created the scarcity that we have in the world. That when you let those go, we have more than enough to support the world and all of her creatures, all of us. And this is something that most people don't accept, because the systems, the structures are geared towards taking, and there's never any give in that. That we take from Mother Earth and we think, okay, I'm wearing a golden ring and this gold comes from someplace. And that someplace is digging it up, destroying the surfaces of Mother Earth, and in terms of the depth too, and also taking parts of her that we do not understand what it means to her physical body. And so when we take, we are where we are. I mean, this is where it's at now. It's a take world. And we have scarcity because people who don't have any of the controls that the people who are in control have, they suffer. But you know, it's an illusion. It's created by a handful of individuals in the world, the billionaires, and the systems that we have set in place to support the take syndrome.
So you said, I was excited to hear you say, to find those who have had the courage to jump and that people are changing. And I'm wondering if you could talk about what you're saying about these people who have had the courage to jump. What does that look like? And
oh, well, that's the thing that gives me hope, real hope, that we have a chance. The elders don't know how many people it's going to take to change, to have these paradigm shifts, if you will. But it's going to be a certain number of people around the world that do jump in this way that changes the consciousness of everything around them. And what it looks like, I can't tell. Each person is very different. When you go to your heart is going to tell you what to do. The mind's job is to implement that which your heart is telling you, not the other way around, which is the way the world is today. The mind is telling the heart what to do. And when traditionally the mind's job was to implement that which your heart is telling you. Now, when you go to your heart, it will tell you something that may be seem totally crazy to people around you. You know, for me, when I did that for the first time over 50 years ago, you know, I was at the peak of patriarchy. I was Commissioner of Commerce and Economic Development for the state of Alaska. I was the head of 17 boards and councils. I was the vice chair of a $3 billion company. And I gave it all up in one day. And people thought I was crazy. And I gave it up because I knew that my time had come for me to then go to what my people demonstrated in their lives over generations, which is to be present in the moment and in the heart. And so when you jump like that, it might be you're a cartographer and your heart is telling you, you got to be an artist, or you know, you're an astronaut. You really need to just be a farmer. You know, it's going to be something that only your heart knows. And what that is the gift to the world. According to our elders, it is that we all have this gift to give to the world, that it's no accident that we're born here at this time. And that the only way that you can access this gift is to go to your heart, and you will find out. But this is where business as usual does not work. That when you shift like that, it's a dramatic shift. And it's going to require a lot of courage for everyone to get to this point. But that's what we're charged to do. It is our responsibility now to help change ourselves so that we can help change other people in the world.
wow, that's a biggie. So when you say go to the heart, it sounds simple, but and it's like just start asking more.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I know, and that is planning means that you're in the head.
Hmm.
And what is that to try to challenge people to stop planning? You know, that's a tall order.
So just a daily practice of really just
Exactly.
asking inside, what is it that I am to do?
Exactly. And the elders are saying that we don't have very much time left as human beings. They don't talk about this generally because they don't want to spread fear, which would feed into that which we're reacting to. But I'm telling you that the elders say that we human beings have very little time left, much shorter than most people prognosticate.
So your hope, though, is that you do see people starting to change and go to their hearts more. Yes.
Yeah, according to these elders, that is going to be the key to the answers that we're seeking. It's not going to be logical or rational. It's trans-rational.
I'm wondering, this is Sheila, if you could speak to how we make a change in the people that hold positions of power in our world, the millionaires, the leaders, et cetera, the political people. It's really difficult, I think, particularly for them to change their situation and follow their heart, look in their heart.
Well, one thing that I've learned, and I'm sure most of you have too, is that you only have the power to change yourself. You don't have the power to change anybody else.
Right.
And when you do that change, you will come up with answers to your question.
Mm. Thanks.
Can I ask a question? I was wondering about the releasing human attachment. So I think there's a lot of layers in that, because yes, we have to look within, and and also our connection with spirit, and and do all that internal validation and that work. And we can only change ourselves. But I do want to ask essentially what that means, because I think, and I don't know if any of you guys feel this sometimes, but there are times when I do feel lonely because I feel like the sacred has left this world. It's slowly coming back. It does when I'm looking for it and I see people struggling to find it. It's, it's a little bit sad that they feel so disconnected. So I do, there's that sense of we want to be connected with one another, but I think the idea of attachment is also there can be, some kind of negative connotations with that. So I was just wondering if we could talk a little bit more about that, just releasing it, the attachment idea.
Well, the elders say the time of the lone wolf is done. And that what you will find as you go through your journey, if you stay on it, you will meet more and more people like you. I mean, I wish that you could see what I see in all the talks that I've given around the world for the last year and a half. There are just literally millions of people that are starting to change. And so it may feel alone right now in the US, but other parts of the world, they're starting to change. I mean, and even in Israel, where women have gotten together, we did women's ceremonies at all the places that, like the Sea of Jordan,
Jordan River,
Jordan River,
Sea of Salt,
Sea of Salt.
Red Sea. And as it's called, and the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah, Sea of Galilee. These were women that did the work. And this is another thing, is that when you are doing this work, you must not question, not ignore your mind. It's the monkey mind, as the Tibetans call it. They'll do all kinds of gyration while you work at being in your heart. Your mind is still going to work, and it's going to try to do all the things that it can do to make sure that it survives this process that you're going through. One of the things that I had them do in Israel was to say gibberish. And you do gibberish for an hour every day for 30 days, and you will start to see a difference. The first time you do that gibberish for an hour, you just lay down and feel it. You might get maybe 10 seconds of that feeling of being present in the moment and in the heart. But when you do it consistently like this, I mean, you got to do it in a place that people won't think you're crazy, amongst people who are that you consider safe, and really practice it sincerely, and you'll begin to see the change. It's hard to describe because it's like a two-dimensional being trying to envision a third dimension, and it's impossible until you have that experience yourself.
So is that the way to then release the idea of attachment? That's what you're talking about too, about just being so present that we're not attached to these external things as we are shifting?
Then it becomes much, much more easier. And you will see how the attachments have weighed us down, and have directed our lives. And that when we go to the heart, you are alive as a real human being. It's like I asked an elder, what's this culture about? He said, we dance, we sing, we chant, we do these rites of passage, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, well, we learned this from the 2-year-old child. You look at the 2-year-old child, and when they're angry, they engage their whole bodies. They can be angry at their buddy that they're playing with, and they would just get into it. And then after a couple minutes, they're playing together again. That's the real human being, according to our elders, is letting go of the toxins that are in our bodies because we are not very emoting. In our society, we think anger is acceptable, and maybe crying is acceptable, but a man to cry at a business meeting, I mean, you men know what that would be like. It would be disaster. You wouldn't be considered a man anymore. You've got to be able to do it where instead of piling up our emotions that we do during the day, that we say to that emotion, I will get to you, emotion, whatever you are, and do so as quickly as possible afterwards, that you just release it because it's like a toxin building up in your body. My elder Rita Blumenstein, who died this year, she said that when we hold on to these feelings, it is creating toxins that will kill you eventually. And so we've got to be able to release it like the 2-year-old child releases it. And the 2-year-old child is the teacher. You want to learn how to be a real human being? Watch a 2-year-old child.
I'm not sure how to ask my questions, so let me see what I'll have to say. In the last number of months, I've found myself becoming more sensitive to not sure how to phrase it, galactic family, tribes off planet, off planet friends, something like that, galactic community. And it seems to me that the veil to that is beginning to thin, that we have more kindredness to all that is out there. Does your people have tradition that speaks to that?
Yeah, we do. The elders are saying that the veil between the worlds is thinning. And I've experienced things that would boggle most people's minds. Like you've heard of portals. Well, we met in Kauai because that is the portal of the souls that are entering Mother Earth. All the souls go through that portal. And even the Dalai Lama has been going there in secret for years. And now it's time to let go of those secrets. I was called to help open up a portal in Canada by the elders in that village in Eastern Canada. And they called together Don Alejandro, who was keeper of the day calendar for the Mayans, Chief Arvo Looking Horse, myself, and one other person. And we were in ceremony for an entire week, in the morning and in the evening, at sunrise and sunset. We did sweats and prayed. And then during the day, we talked. And at the end of the fourth day, we went up to this place that the elders wanted us to help them open up. Now, at that point in time, I didn't know anything about portals. I've heard stories about them amongst my people, but I never seen a portal. So anyway, that place was 2 miles up a mountain. On top of the mountain was a lake. And that's where the portal was that they used to talk to their star ancestors and to their ancestors. Mind you, it's going to boggle your mind in some way. The entire village went with us. The elders called this together because that portal hadn't been used for 100 years. And they knew that it needed to be opened up again because it closed through to lack of use. And we went up the mountain, and as we did, I saw all the people were wearing their regalia. And Don Alejandro had a 300-year-old peace pipe that he smoked. And he let out this wolf call. When we got to the portal entrance, he let out this wolf call, and a real wolf called back right across the lake, looking directly at us. And then I hear this growling, gnarly sound I never heard before. And the chief leans over to me and says, Sasquatch. And then it had thunder and lightning, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. But there was thunder and lightning, and it came right over us to the point that our bodies were vibrating. And then it started to rain, and then I walk away from the group, and I see that the rain is only going over them, not anybody else. It was like a cartoon. And that was a signal that the elders were waiting for, that we succeeded in opening up the portal. What I learned was that my job was to teach the people there how to keep it clean energetically and physically. And I knew how to do that. So that's just some example of what I know. Now, I went down to Patagonia. We were invited by the Mapuche people, and they invited 2 elders to come down there. And out of this council that I was coordinating, and the elders chose me, and they said, only me. I didn't know why. I learned why, because it was 125 degrees during the day up in the mountains where they were holding the ceremony, and 25 at night. 100-degree temperature difference in one day. And I must have peed like 20, 25 times in one day. It was quite something. Anyway, when I got there, the elders couldn't communicate with the Mapuche because they don't have any means of communication. They had sent an individual to Alaska to transfer the invitation, and he left. So there was no way to tell the Mapuche that I'm coming. So I get there, and the chief said, I tried to explain why I'm there, why it was me that was coming, and only me. And the chief said, we already know you were coming. And I said, well, how did you know? Well, the elders told us. How'd the elders know? They talked to the earth and the sky. And that's where I knew I was working with real elders. And the purpose of our gathering was to restore a ceremony that they hadn't performed in 150 years in a desert, in a sacred place that's secret from everybody. And it was called the Troika dance. Troika in South American is, what do you call that? What's that big bird? Ostrich. Troika is ostrich. And the ostrich does a dance to let it rain. And they call it the Troika dance because it's like a drunken troika. They get crazy legs, and they're dancing all over the place before the rain comes. And then it hadn't rained in this place in 100 years or so. And so they decide to do the ceremony, and the men would do this dance all day and all night. And our job was to help them energetically by projecting our energies to help them in their dance. And when we knew that the ceremony was successful, I kid you not, this happened. There were 4 eagles. 2 of them were 2 eagles and 2 condors. And the condors went counterclockwise at the end of the field going upward, and the sea eagle went clockwise and went upward. There were 2 pairs. And then there was rain that started to come a long distance away. It was thunder and lightning, and the rain came, and I kid you not, it was like the raindrops were this big. They were this big. I'd never seen rain like that in my life. But then the elders knew that they succeeded. So that's just some examples of the things that I've experienced. And who knows, quantum physics eventually will see what that means.
Is there
Okay.
any traditional teachings around, return of relationship with galactic family?
Well, that will happen if it's meant to happen. There are no, each group has their own ways. For example, the group that I was with in Canada, they were able to talk with their star ancestors and their ancestors. How they did it, who knows? That's just one of the mysteries of the world right now. But there are many, or not many, but some indigenous peoples around the world that can still do this. And they don't share it because the rest of the world wouldn't understand it. So, and besides that, right now, concentrating on star ancestors um, according to the elders, may not be a good use of your time. You must work at your healing. That's number one. But you've been very, very engaged in this conversation. I thank you all for that. Now, the thing about this is that we are all gurus now. There's no singular guru. And so we are all we are the ones we've been waiting for. You have the answers in your heart.